Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I'm Councillor Steve Pitt, the leader of Portsmouth City Council, and I will be chairing this meeting. But housekeeping before we start: if the continuous fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the room public gallery by the stairwells, and not attempt to use the lifts, and assemble by Queen Victoria's statue in Guildhall Square. In order to comply with the Guildhall Trust Fire Marshal regulations, anyone who signed in at the Guildhall reception desk should sign out when leaving the building at the end of today's meeting. Everyone speaking via a microphone will be recorded and broadcast on the website, including anyone making a deputation. Members of the press and public are also permitted to record the meeting on the understanding it neither disrupts the meeting nor records those explicitly stating that they do not wish to be recorded. Please can everyone use the microphones and remember to switch them off when they have finished. We've read the reports, but officers will highlight any developments since publication or any key points that we need to note. We'll begin with introductions around the room. I've said who I am, and to my left we have.
Thank you, Leader. Natalie Brahma-Pearl, Chief Executive.
Anna Martin, Democratic Service.
Chris Ward, Director of Finance and Resources.
Kimberly Barber, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Green in the City.
Matthew Winnington, Cabinet Member for Community Wellbeing, Health and Care.
Nick Dorrington, Cabinet Member for Children, Families and Education.
Darren Sanders, Cabinet Member for Housing and Tackling Homelessness.
This works best if you keep eye contact with me and I acknowledge who's going to speak next, because this is going a bit all over the place. So if we could stick to that, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Hugh, next, please.
Councillor Hugh Mason, Cabinet Member for Planning Policy and City Development.
Councillor Peter Candlish, Cabinet Member for Transport.
Chris Atwell, Cabinet Member for Central Services.
Dave Ashmore, Cabinet Member for Environmental Services.
Okay, now we go to the top back row.
Sarah Daly, Director of Children, Families and Education.
Ian Maguire, Planning and Economic Growth.
Lucy Howard, Head of Planning Policy.
Keely Mitchell, Head of Adolescents and Young Adults.
Lisa Morgan, Service Leader for Portsmouth Youth Justice Service.
Rachel McMinn, Head of Corporate Affairs, Portsmouth International Port.
And finally,
Helen Dickerson, Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you, Helen. We're also joined by Councillor Smythe, for the moment at least, and Toby from the Local Democracy Reporting Service. Okay, we have any apologies for absence. Councillor Hunt this afternoon, who's got carers duties, and that's it, I think, isn't it? Everyone else is here. Yeah, okay. Members, any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting from the 25th of September 2025. Are they okay as a true record of the meeting? Any comments or queries? No. We're happy to approve. Okay. So noted. Thank you. I'll sign those at the end of the meeting. Okay, item 4 is Portsmouth Youth Justice Strategic Plan 2025 to 2027, and Keely as Head of Service for Adolescents and Young Adults, and Lisa Morgan as Service Leader. I believe you're presenting. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Today we are bringing the Youth Justice Plan for 2025-27 to you. It's been developed and agreed with all our youth justice partners in consultation with Youth Justice Service staff and Portsmouth Children and Families, setting out a real ambition to develop and modernise youth justice services delivered in the city. And I'm bringing it to you today for final approval by yourselves and the full council. Portsmouth Youth Justice Service is committed to a child-first approach, so we're treating children as children, building pro-social identity, collaborating with families and diverting from stigma. The plan is rooted in partnership work in early intervention and evidence-based practice to reduce offending and improve outcomes for young people, whilst keeping community safety and impact on victims at the forefront of everything that we do. In Portsmouth, we believe every child and young person is valued, gifted and full of potential. To help them thrive and stay safe from harm, exploitation and crime, we are committed to working together as a strong, united partnership across the city. So within the plan, what you will see is our key priorities for 25-27. So I'll just quickly go through those key priorities, and then I'll just focus on some of the achievements that we've achieved over the past couple of years. So our key priorities for 2025-27 are reducing first-time entrants. We want to strengthen our early help and prevention pathways, enhance data sharing and identification of children at risk. We expand diversionary options and evaluate youth diversion programmes. Our second key priority is reducing reoffending and improving community safety, which is really key with all the work that we do. Using reoffending data to inform targeted intervention, improve step-down processes and family support, and align with wider community safety and safeguarding strategies. We also want to reduce our use of custody. And to do that, we've established a new risk of remand and custody panel, which I'll talk briefly about in a minute. We've enhanced alternatives to custody. We're looking to develop that with different approaches, and to embed constructive resettlement planning and support. We want to support priority groups, address disproportionality, improve access to education, training and employment for our young people, and strengthen support for care experience and vulnerable children. We also want to promote victims' rights and restorative justice, refresh restorative justice policy and practice, improve victim support and feedback mechanisms, and establish a new RJ and victim subgroup, which is already established and running well. Thank you very much. We are also supporting best practice and service development, so merging our QA and workforce development into a single subgroup. So it updates our training strategy and embeds reflective practice and strengthens stakeholders and voice and co-production. So over the past couple of years, we've been really pleased with the progress we've made, and that's thanks a lot to my service lead sitting here, Lisa Morgan, who is invaluable and a great asset to the service. We're pleased to have made good progress in key areas of our two-year plan and proud of the work we do. We also strive to always do more, recognising that there are challenges we must tackle together, as well as opportunities to stretch our ambition further. Our first-time entrants have reduced from 53 to 33, so that's a huge reduction. Our reoffending 12-month cohort has reduced to 34%. Our custody has increased, and we know that we want to do better in that, but actually the crimes that were committed at the time warranted custody, which is not the place we want our young people to be, and that's why we've developed our custody risk of remand and custody panel to start thinking about those children at an earlier stage about what we can do to create differences, but also keeping community safety in mind. Our disproportionality work is ongoing to improve data and address our overrepresentation of our children in our service, particularly from our ethnic majority children. And our governance and resources. So we're led by Youth Justice Partnership Management Board, chaired by our Director of Children's Services, Sarah Daly. And we are funded through a mix of youth justice grants, local authority, police, health and OPCC contributions, and the total budget is 1.26 million. We have a strong alignment with Portsmouth Children's Trust Plan, safeguarding strategies and VRU priorities. And I think we've made some really good progress over the last couple of years, but we see work to be done, and we're really proud to be taking this forward within the city so we can promote safety across the board. So if there's any other questions you'd like to ask.
Thank you, Keely. Lisa, is there anything you wanted to add in?
No, but happy to respond to questions if there are any.
Okay, and I am mindful that we also do have Sarah Daly with us today. Sarah, is there any comments you wanted to add?
Nothing from me other than to thank both the officers, Keely and Lisa, for their contribution and their leadership within this space provided to the partnership.
Thank you. Great piece of work, and some of those numbers have made very significant moves in the right direction. Of course, obviously, the best outcomes for young people is that they never end up in the criminal justice system at all, which is what we want to be working towards. But when they do, we need to try and work out the best way to deal with them in a way that will not encourage reoffending and will get them back out and onto a good path in life as soon as possible. And I know that's been the focus of this piece of work over the last couple of years and will be as it moves forward. So again, just to reiterate, as Sarah said, huge thank you from me for the work and the progress, which I note and I'm very pleased to see. Members, has anyone else got any comments or questions about this? Nick?
As you will all know, I'm a man of very few words, so I'll keep these short and sweet. But first and foremost, just to really commend the work that's gone into the report and what seems to be a very in-depth look at what we're doing and what we're proposing to do moving forward. And it's nice to see that the focus is on preventative measures. But the main things to pick up from the report is we're acknowledging what we're doing, we're learning from any of the pitfalls and mistakes that we come across. So we are improving the service yet reducing the cost. So what's not to commend moving forward. So thank you very much for all the work you've put in.
Okay, anyone else? No? Okay, in which case we are, we have two recommendations. The first is that we approve this Youth Justice Plan for 2025 to 2027, and we recommend that full council give final approval of the plan in line with local governance processes. So that will go to the next full council meeting. Members, is everyone happy? Okay, those recommendations are accepted. Thank you both very much for coming today. It's really appreciated, and keep up the good work. Okay, item 5 on the agenda today is the Education, Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel Review into Elective Home Education. It's the response report covered on pages 83 to 86 of your pack. The purpose of the report is to set out the response from officers in Education, Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel's recommendations arising from the review, and we have two recommendations before us. Who's talking about this? Is it you, Sarah? Okay, over to you.
Yeah, I'll start and I'll introduce other officers if needed. So the Education, Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel undertook the review of elective home education from February to June 2025. It noted that nationally there's been a significant increase in elected home educated children, which has also been reflected locally. We also noted that the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, which is currently progressing through Parliament, refers to a compulsory registration of all children in elective home education and enhanced powers to assess children, which includes conversations with the child who is being electively home educated. The panel was supported by a number of stakeholders, schools within the city, head teachers, parents who do electively home educate, and officers from within the system. The panel found that there were good systems in place to support and ensure that children were receiving an appropriate education, and they acknowledged that that reflected a three-way meeting that was held with schools whenever a child was being considered for deregistering from a school role. It also noted that the vast majority of parents who electively home educate are doing a good job. The recommendations from the report, there are only 4 of them. One was to ensure that the current processes in place are continued to be adopted, and that the guidance is in place, recognising the potential for the Children's Wellbeing and School Bill, but also potentially in light of the local government reorganisation and devolution proposals. So we have set out within the plan that we will be reviewing those procedures and guidance annually, as we always have done. That there was consideration to access of the children's social care system for those officers working within the elective home education service. We reviewed that with our Children's Social Care Caldecott Guardian, who obviously has a review of all sensitive information held by children. At this time, it was felt that that would not be appropriate due to the level of information held on that system, but there would be a review of how that information was shared at an appropriate level in terms of consent and access, and that has been agreed and approved. We also agreed that we would look at how we work with the DWP around the DWP database. At the moment, that is currently not been able to be progressed, but we will continue to work with those officers. So that concludes the report update. I will just ask colleagues whether or not there is anything that they wish to add at this time.
No, I don't think so.
No. I'll open for questions.
Okay. Members, any questions? No, it was a pretty short, sharp piece of work, wasn't it? No? Okay, in which case we have 2 recommendations before us today. One, that we thank the panel for its work in undertaking the review, and secondly, that we note and consider the conclusions and recommendations as set out in section 4 of the report. Members, are we happy with those? We are. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Item 6 on the agenda today is the draft pre-submission Portsmouth Local Plan Addendum, pages 87 to 206 of your papers today. Lucy, is that over to you? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm here to present the local plan addendum. This forms Appendix 1 of your pack, while the sustainability appraisal, the habitat regulations assessment, policy map extracts, and the integrated impact assessment forms Appendices 2 to 6 of the pack. Cabinet made the decision in April this year to prepare a local plan addendum, and 6 months later, here it is. That decision followed on from the government opinion on Tipner West, which I will update you on shortly. The addendum is not a standalone document, and it should be read alongside the 2024 pre-submission local plan. Officers have done their level best to make the addendum straightforward to follow. We had a meeting with an advisory inspector from the Planning Inspectorate, and he said in his written report to us that he thought the addendum has a logical flow and is clear in setting out the context and what is in scope within the addendum. The preface of the addendum explains what it includes and what it doesn't include. So what is in the addendum is allocations affected by the European opinions, allocations with other changes to development quantums and types, and new employment and housing targets. What isn't in there, everything else that was in the 2024 pre-submission local plan was unaffected by the European opinions, and there have been no other changes, and so they are not in the addendum. The policies have been consulted on once and do not need to be consulted on again. For the consultation, to make it easier for people, we're going to prepare a composite plan that slots the 2025 addendum into the full 2024 pre-submission plan. Right, I'm going to talk about Tipner. I'll keep it as brief as I can. So it's all about Europe, imperative reasons of overriding public interest. We have received 2 unlawful opinions from the Secretary of State, both of which have been withdrawn. This leaves us in an Europe vacuum, with no opinion to tell us whether we could allocate or how we could allocate Tipner West. We are therefore proceeding at risk with our plan. You took the very sensible and pragmatic decision back in April to prepare a site allocation that does not cause any harm to international nature conservation designations that cannot be mitigated. Therefore, the new policy PLP3 is risk-free in terms of Europe, but it does not deliver a marine hub with the 3,600 new jobs that we wanted it to create. For the latest update, we have received a letter from government last week asking us about our new policy and questioning whether it was an alternative to the first, meaning that we didn't need to do an European opinion. We didn't need to do the European exercise at all. We sent a firm answer to that letter saying that the new policy does not deliver a regionally significant marine hub, and so it is not a valid alternative to the original policy. We await a response on that. Going forward, the local plan addendum goes to full council on the 11th of November, and if approved, we will have the pre-submission consultation running from the 18th of November to the 8th of January. It's a bit longer than normal because of Christmas, so we've extended it by a few days. Following that, we will submit the local plan with its addendum to the Planning Inspectorate for examination by March next year. That will trigger the examination, part of which are the hearings. Fingers crossed the inspector, and we're sure we will find it sound, subject to major modifications. We would need to run a consultation on that. That would probably be at the beginning of 2027. And we will be adopting a sound and legally compliant Portsmouth local plan in 2027. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Therapy time. Councillor Mason.
I want to add to that and make a few points. The first thing is that the draft local plan, which we produced in July 24, produced an integrated strategy for Tipner, Horsey Island and Port Solent, which fully met the requirements of the city deal, which we signed up to in 2012. And also seemed to provide, or we believed it provided, more than adequate mitigation for the effects on the natural environment. So it was a good plan. But since there would be some effect on the natural environment, we needed government approval. We needed an IROP. It was not an option, we had to go for it. And we thought we had a very good case. But as Lucy has pointed out, when we went in April 23 and asked for an opinion, we were told we were too early. When we went in October 24, it took them about 5 months to actually reply to us, and then it was unlawful. We wrote back to them, and in July 25, we got another letter, which was again unlawful on the advice of our council. There was no time to produce another letter, and so we had to go with what we'd got. The integrated strategy was impossible, and so we revised Tipner West, and that would have knock-on effects, not just on Port Solent and Horsea, but on other housing throughout the city. And so a full addendum was needed, and a lot of work went into it. One can see from the size of the paper on my desk how much work went into that. And so you'll find on page 44 of the papers the main changes to housing on page 177 and on employment on page 184. It doesn't quite meet all the detail of the city deal, but it's as close as we can get. But I think it's also fair to say at this point, this is the best we can do at the present time, but it leaves us with a number of problems. If we're ever to develop Port Solent, we need to have a bridge from Tipner West. We have no means of doing it now. The government says we can't. We need to fund the sea defences. And that is quite important because Tipner sea defences are in a very poor state and the whole area is low-lying. And we will not, I think, be easily able to do this with the development which is being proposed. We lose the very high-tech manufacturing which we had proposed in the local plan, and we are likely to get much lower quality employment as a result. And of course, we will still need government approval. So I think that this is a very good and very detailed piece of work. It is the best we can do under the circumstances that the government has put us in. And I think that the planning team needs to be commended on the quality of the work. Thank you.
Councillor Mason. Members, anyone else? No, I mean, it's quite frightening that you can write to a government twice with all of their all of the assets they have at their disposal. Oh, sorry, Matthew, you've now put your hand up. Over to you.
You were looking the wrong direction, Leader. I was just going to pick up on the bridge because I think this is, apart from all the other shenanigans that have gone on around this, our local plan, which quite frankly we've been let down by 2 governments on, by putting something forward that was, by the previous government taking absolutely forever to get around to actually replying to us about just about anything, and then the current government's then taking all that time to basically then say no, it's not compliant, which of course, as we said, as Councillor Mason said, on 2 occasions we looked at it from the point of view of our council and say it's unlawful. And is it funny that a government makes decisions that are unlawful? It's absolute nonsense. But the bridge issue is really a key one because the city deal, which was mentioned, which was agreed just at the point, around the point when I first became a councillor over a decade ago, was a groundbreaking city deal. It was done by 2 cities together, ourselves and Southampton. It was all about about developing not just homes, but also about employment space and the innovative stuff we have got a very proud history in this city of high-tech, high-quality employment for people of Portsmouth and around the area. And this is throwing that completely under the bus. But speaking of buses, it is the bridge. The bridge, which was a part of, was our bids when we got our bus money, which that was a key part of it, that the money we got for our improved bus links in the city using existing roads was only part of it. Part of it was also with the understanding that we would be able to invest in a bridge, we would be able to go to the government to get money, to invest in a bridge which would then cut a big corner for buses, for access only to Horsey Island, for buses and for walking and cycling. And we won't be able to do that anymore because we won't have the money to do it. Not only will we not have the money to do it, but we haven't got permission to build in that area because the government said, no, that doesn't fit compliance with that area. So this has wide-ranging consequences, not just about the fundamentals like the housing and the employment, but it's also about our infrastructure. And for a government that has said we're going to invest in important things, including infrastructure, it's a bit of a slap in the face when we as an authority, over a decade ago, came to a plan which was worked with not just ourselves, but looking at a partner up the road where we were looking at infrastructure as well as building housing and employment space as well. So the fact that we've had a delay of over a year to get this in because of shenanigans for the government is ridiculous. But I'm very pleased to back this addendum. It's a disgrace we ever actually had to do it. But the consequences for our area of the messing about from government, they always talk about, don't they? The government talks about growth. Well, there's an area around here that won't get growth. We will do the best we can with a hand tied behind our back. But yeah, thanks very much, Labour government. Thanks very much to former Secretary of State. Thanks very much to everyone who involved with that. But you've completely shut off for an area that could really do with it, quite frankly, an opportunity for growth.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Matt. Anyone else? No. So yeah, it's all a bit of a mess, this, isn't it? I'm afraid. I remember reading the initial IROPE opinion when it came back from the previous Secretary of State. And I remember saying that I thought that it started off okay, but then it looked like the rest of it was written by a SPAD and not by a planning professional. And actually nobody's disagreed with my view on that because it was appallingly badly written and clearly not written by anyone with a planning background. So I think that was probably an attempt to dash something off and get it off the desk, because I think we received it the day before the deadline, and then we've waited yet again for another load of rubbish to come back, which is also not legally sound. So we continue to try to get a logical and well-rounded and legally based opinion back from government, but in the meantime we have to do something because otherwise our local plan is dead. So the addendum is a pragmatic and practical way through that. It's been, as Hugh has outlined and Lucy's introduced, very well pulled together in only 6 months. It's thorough, and I agree that it is an accessible document that's easy to understand, which is important when you're dealing with a government who don't seem to understand anything. So hopefully we won't have that problem when it goes in, and we'll just have to see what comes back. And in the meantime, we'll continue to pursue the government for clarity. So what do they actually think about our IROPE case, rather than what they've so far committed to tomorrow's chip paper, I think will probably be the best way to describe it. So that, members, leaves us with a situation we've got to go through some process here, because full council need to make the final decision. So the recommendations are as follows. 1, that we approve the draft pre-submission Portsmouth Local Plan Addendum, that's a mouthful, isn't it, and its draft policies map extract for public consultation under Regulation 19 of the Town and Country Planning in brackets, Local Planning England Regulations 2012, subject to any minor changes that are deemed necessary prior to the start of the consultation being agreed by the Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning, policy and city development. Is that agreed? Thank you. 2, we approve the draft sustainability and appraisal and draft habitats regulations assessment, supporting the draft pre-submission Ports Local Plan addendum for public consultation under Regulation 19 of the Town and Country Planning, in brackets, Local Planning England Regulations 2012, subject to any minor changes that are deemed necessary prior to the start of the consultation being agreed by the Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning policy and city development. Is that agreed? 3, delegate authority to the Assistant Director of Planning and Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder for planning policy and city development to take any minor changes arising from the consultation and submit the pre-submission Ports and Local Plan addendum and the 2024 pre-submission Ports and Local Plan to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government under Regulation 22 of the Town and Country Planning, Local Planning England, all in brackets, Regulations 2012 for examination along with both sets of pre-submission representations and the core document library. Is that agreed? 4, note that if major changes are required to the pre-submission Portsmouth Local Plan addendum, that a further public consultation and decision by the City Council will be required. Is that understood? And finally, we note that the final Portsmouth Local Plan will be brought back following the consultation in its entirety to full council prior to formal adoption following the independent examination undertaken by an inspector appointed by the Secretary of State. Is that understood? Okay. Any further comments on this one before we move on? No? In that case, Ian, Lucy, thank you very much indeed. We'll now talk about it all over again at the full council meeting. Item 7 on the agenda today is something slightly different. 50th anniversary of Portsmouth International Port, which happens to be next year, 2026. Rachel and Mike, over to you.
Hello, good afternoon. This report is just to outline plans for a year of celebrations. It's to mark 50 years of the first ferry sailing at Portsmouth International Port since it became a commercial port in 1976. There will be a series of activities, including a launch of a new economic impact report at the House of Commons, and that will be for key stakeholders. In June, we will hold an open day so the community can see behind the scenes. And there will be a formal event with Brittany Ferries for the official sailing that took place on the 17th of June, so we will do that as well. It's an opportunity to showcase the port, highlighting the range of roles in the maritime industry, and we will also be supporting the centenary events that will be taking place across the city as well. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, comments or questions? Kimberly and then Matthew.
Well, we all love our port, don't we? We're very glad that we own it as well as a council, and I think that's something we always need to remember and be speaking about. I'm really excited about what's coming up. I went to the last open day with my children and they wouldn't stop talking about it for weeks. In fact, that's part of the reason that's prompted my eldest child, Jacob, he's 14, he's now interested in God knows why, transport and engineering. So he's quite keen and looking forward. And I said to him there was another open day coming up because he really liked going on some of the boats and having a look at some of the engineering side of things. So anything like that that prompts interest and future careers for our young people across the city and having opportunities to be able to look in depth in these things. I mean, it's why I originally done my degree, because I got taken to see the Mary Rose and absolutely fell in love with maritime archaeology, museum management, the environmental sector. So it's sometimes some of these key events that happen, some of the things that will prompt children and young people to go on to careers that they would never have even thought about. So I just wanted to mention that. Congratulations and happy birthday for the 50th anniversary. And I really appreciate you pulling this report together, and really going to be a lovely, interesting, fun year for the port, and long may it continue. So thank you, guys.
Matthew?
Thanks, and thanks for this paper. It's really great to see what's planned for next year, and isn't it isn't it something, I talk about investment and growth. Well, this council nearly 50 years ago invested in a port because it had the land and it was able to do what it wanted to do with it. Shame we haven't got that somewhere else in the city now because we've been stopped by government. But this shows what the council can do when it has that opportunity. So I remember, so my first experience of the port was in 1990, first trip abroad, and we went to, we got the ferry to Caen on our family holiday. Also my mum's first time abroad at the age of, well, I won't say what the age was then, but that was 1990, and that wasn't long after Portsmouth had snaffled the final ferries away from Southampton. So to the extent that my when I went back to my to school and I told my teacher that I'd gone from Portsmouth, they, no, you must have gone from Southampton. Of course, he was a bit behind the times, not realising that Portsmouth had finally snaffled the last of the Brittany ferries from, and any of the cross-channel ferries from Southampton at that point, I think the previous year. But 14 years before that, that was when it all did, and it is one of our success stories that we're very proud, and obviously, looking at the future, this uncertainty about LGR, it does cause us, it gives us kittens, because we don't want this to become something that a future authority sees as something that they can use as a asset disposal. It will continue to make money. It's a really good way for us to invest money in the city, because it brings so many people here. It brings people sort of going through it and everything. It makes a real difference to this city, and I hope whatever happens in the future that it will continue on for another 50 years and beyond, and which something we should be extremely proud of, and we should and very thankful to all of our team, present and past, that have made the port what it is.
Thank you, Matthew. Anyone else? Hugh?
The year events will promote council ownership model of the port and shared values. The shared values which we have with the port are numerous, but the way in which the port has developed in the recent years, you look at the solar panels, you look at the use of electricity, rather than having ships using their diesel engines in port. These are the values which we have in this city, and the port shares with us. And I think that this is something which is a model for the rest of the country, and I think we should be proud of it.
Thank you, Hugh. Anyone else? No, I just wanted to say thank you very much, and I understand why it's here. It's because you don't want the whole of the centenary stuff to be too prominent. You want the port, mate. Got to remind us that it's the port's 50th anniversary next year too, Councillor Pitt. Don't you and the Cabinet go forgetting that. So we appreciate the fact that you've brought this report, and knowing as I do, we've got an update on the wider centenary stuff coming over the next few weeks, and the relationship between that and the port activities for next year means we're going to have a really busy and exciting year, and it's also an opportunity in promoting the fact that it's the 50th anniversary of the port to promote some more business opportunities for the port, isn't it, Mike? Because that's a really important part of this too. So thanks very much. It's a timely reminder to make sure that this is dovetailed seamlessly into the centenary stuff that we'll be doing next year as well. And I think it's going to be a really good fit because there's some exciting stuff happening, not least a certain sign that I discussed last week, which we'll talk more about in the coming weeks. So for those of you watching online, there will be more information coming shortly on that, and we'll be talking about it a bit more. It's a nice little project for next year. So thanks for bringing that, and the report is noted, colleagues. Everybody happy to note the report? Yes, good. Rachel and Mike, thank you very much indeed. Okay, we're on to item 8 on today's agenda, which is contained in pages 211 to 230 in your pack, and it's citywide Community Infrastructure Levy Community Infrastructure Projects, if I read that in full, which is a bit of a mouthful, Ian, but over to you.
Thank you. So we have 5 recommendations before you today, all fundamentally seeking a contribution from the citywide pot, as it's called, of the Neighbourhood Community Infrastructure Levy, as members will recall, for those largest of schemes. The first £150,000 of neighbourhood SIL is reserved for citywide activities. That current pot has £153,861 in it, and we have 3 calls against that pot, so we brought them to you collectively today, so you can look and ensure you're not exceeding the budget that is available. The first is a £50,000 request for a funding contribution to the Wild in Art Trail, obviously a key component of the centenary celebrations. Details are laid out in the report. 3 recommendations: 1 for that £50,000 contribution, and then 2 operational ones for delegation to the corporate performance manager in consultation with the leader to arrange the retention and installation of some of those sculptures. And 3, agree that any proceeds or sponsorship on the for the sale of those sculptures that exceed the cost of staging the trail would be returned to the Citywide Neighbourhood SIL Fund. That gives the flexibility to either keep these as permanent community infrastructure, or if there is insufficient demand for that permanent installation, for that funding to, through sponsorship and sale, to come back into the pot and can be used for future projects. So that's the first £50,000 request. The second is a £70,000 request towards the citywide SUD scheme in schools across the city. This is a very much ongoing partnership scheme with the Department of Education and with Southern Water. We've got quite a number of schools already up and running, with funding from both of those, but there is a match funding demand towards us to keep that momentum going, and that £70,000 should support between 4 and 7 additional schools to have SUDs built into their school estates, which obviously both improves the estates from a management and operation, but also helps support that climate and shading obligations that are a day-to-day obligation upon all of us and as public custodians. That's a £70,000 contribution in recommendation 4. And then finally, recommendation 5, a funding contribution for £5,133 for infrastructure and accessibility improvements at the Milton community allotment. While that is an allotment in Milton, details have been provided in the report of the wider reach that this community allotment has across the whole city, and consequently it is considered appropriate to look at the city-wide funding pot for that as well. Those 3 contributions come to 125,133, which leaves you still with about £30,000 in the city-wide community infrastructure pot. And obviously, as new schemes hopefully come forward with large contributions, that pot will refill as it has in the past as well. Obviously, happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ian. Members? Camille? I thought, there's no way that we're going to get through an agenda item that's got SUDs on there, which Ian didn't actually explain what that stands for, and left you an open door to dive in and explain it all, and you weren't going to say anything. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, no, I was going to speak very briefly about the SUDS scheme. So for those who don't know, SUDS is sustainable urban drainage across the city, especially in places like schools, which have been heavily concreted and are in areas that are really sort of densely populated and built up. This gives us the opportunity to be able to do more for a number of schools across the city, to make sure that they do have accessible playgrounds to go out in, and they don't have to worry about going out into, which has happened across the city in various schools, when there's been heavy rain, where that water hasn't been able to go down into the ground because of the huge amount of concrete on playgrounds. This gives us the opportunity to be able to do more with that work and enable more children to go out and play in their environment and not be stuck inside. We've been really successful so far. A number of schools have already signed up and are having work done, and I'm really pleased with colleagues across various portfolios and offices as well who've been really engaged in that work. Also, thanks to Southern Water, who have, to be fair, provided funding towards this. And I'm pleased that we've been able to bring this £70,000 forward. As it's been mentioned, a lot of this is match funding, and we have done match funding with that. But this £70,000 would provide even further a number of schools across, and it's not in just one area of the city, this is across the city. It enables those schools to have further access to their playgrounds. There's continual work, not just on SUDS, but also in regards to heat that we do have. So you've got go from one extreme, from flooding to severe heat, which it means that children aren't able to go out when it's been absolutely awful weather outside because there's flooding, or they can't go outside because it's so hot that they can't touch the concrete in case of having issues. Really pleased to be able to work with Councillor Dorrington on this and Councillor Mason because it crosses across a number of portfolios. So I hope colleagues approve this. It means that we can enable children to have a better environment at school, not just inside but outside as well. So hopefully colleagues will approve this. But yeah, it's really good work and it's something we should continue supporting.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hugh?
Just a comment that on the Scheme 1, Wild in Art, I see that Blackpool has Elmer, Brighton and Hove has a sheep, Cambridge has a cow, but we're taking the wild seriously. We have lions.
Yes, Councillor Mason, we have. And the lions are obviously an homage to the lions that are either side of the Guildhall steps. That's the point of the plan. Although there may be other lions that come up as part of this. That's something else for those watching online to look out for in coming weeks. A bit of a trailer there, but no spoilers at this stage. So, well, there's no fun if there's no surprises, and they're nice surprises. So thanks very much, Ian, for bringing it in. And of course, as you quite rightly identify, if sponsorship and or sales after the trailer's over produce surplus, that can go back into the citywide pot and then deliver something else. And I'm really pleased that the modest amount for the community allotments going in there, because that does deliver for clients through adult social care across the city, and it's good to see them being supported. And we've already eloquently heard from Councillor Barrett about the SUD scheme. So are we happy to approve? I'm not going to read the recommendations because Ian summarised them all in very helpfully in his opening comments. So are we happy with recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as listed on the paper? Yes. We are. In that case, Ian, thank you very much indeed. And we move on to item 9, and Chris will be expecting me to say something rude about how exciting money is, so I'm not going to. Over to you.
Thank you, Leader. So this is your Q1 revenue budget monitoring report. So it takes you to the end of June 2025. No new developments, just highlights. So in overall terms, you'll notice within the report that the overall forecast position for the council is a 662,000 forecast overspend. That represents a variance of just 0.3%. So relatively small in comparison and scale to the overall council's budget. There are some significant cost pressures within the overall budget and forecast. They actually amount to about 8.4 million, but the majority of which were already planned for, but were planned for within the council's corporate contingency because they were of a nature that we weren't certain what the overall scale of those cost pressures might be. So they are well planned for within the council's budget. Just a little bit of context to that, £5.3 million of the £8.4 million worth of pressures are what we describe as windfall costs and where we have provided within the contingency. There's also £1.5 million within that 8.4 that was also planned, and it's a planned contribution from the parking reserve, and that's to meet costs associated with the park and ride scheme, subsidised buses and travel concessions. You'll be aware that we still have the key cost pressures around temporary accommodation. That's on a downward trajectory at the moment, but at the end of quarter one, we were anticipating 4.8 million. We anticipate that coming down further throughout the year. We have a cost pressure in home to school transport around education. We have a income pressure around the income that we anticipated we would receive from the Energy Recovery Facility. So that's down on our forecast. And we have some income pressures around the tower as well. Our treasury management activities continue to perform well, and that is likely to generate a surplus, if you like, of £1 million. But in overall terms, that takes us back to the start, which is we expect that the overall position will be a 662,000 forecast overspend. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Chris. Members, any questions or comments? No. Chris, how does this compare to the position we were in the same time last year?
It's an enormous improvement compared to where we were last year. This time last year, at the end of Q1, I think we were presenting something in the order of a £5 million forecast overspend. It's an enormous improvement, and it's partly due to the additional funding that the council approved for our social care services at the meeting back in February.
Cool. And would it be fair to say that the position would improve a lot further if the LGA's forecast pressure on maintaining existing council services at their current levels by 2028-29, which was an £8.4 billion pressure, which has been partly met by the new government, but not fully. If all of that money came in, would that ease pressure across the system?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Matthew?
Thanks. Thanks for the report, Chris. I think it is worth, and this just goes to show how much better a situation we are compared to last year. One of the reasons for that is adult social care, at the end of Q1, is underspent, which is almost unheard of. But one of the reasons for that, we think, because it's always about, you never know about the trends and everything, is because you can't directly do it, is because we brought in a brokerage system this year through a huge amount of work, which has been prepared for quite a few years now, and has finally been done for some of our residential care provision. Already did it for domestic care, and it's made a real difference. We think, as much as we can tell. But that's because of the work that we're doing at this authority that we have control over here. In other parts of the country, including some of our neighbours, they'd either already done this work or their costs are that much higher in general. And because we're able to do it for Portsmouth and we're able to concentrate on these things, and because even though we are still in an overspent position overall, we are still in a better state than just about any other authority in the country. That's just the reality of it, and this is the thing. Any move to put us into a new authority with any part of Hampshire is going to make that situation significantly worse. It is going to screw the people of this city. So this is in a significantly better place than it was last year. We're still overspent, like every local authority is, but we're significantly better, in a significantly better state than Hampshire, than Southampton, than the Isle of Wight, than just about every other local, upper tier local authority in the country, apart from a couple of very wealthy ones in central London and one or two others elsewhere. We had a statement today about local government reorganisation about Surrey. It's going to be two massive local authorities, splitting it into about 550,000 people each. It's not going to be local. They're not going to be able to respond to local need, to come up with innovative solutions that provide a local need in somewhere like Woking or Guildford, because they're going to be having to be looking at what they're going to do in Spelthorne, up basically in Hounslow in London, near Slough and things like that, right down to it. And then on the other side, from areas around Dorking, they're going to have to look at places like Tandridge, etc. It's not going to be local. That's what the government wants to do to Portsmouth. It wants to make decisions made for us, that we make good decisions decisions where we know our markets, we know our care markets, we know our other things about when it comes to housing providers, when it comes to other things to do with children's as well. It's going to take that away from us because we're going to have to be, if the government gets the way that they've been saying, you have to be involved with this, you're going to have to be looking at, oh, what's happening in Havant, what's happening in Gosport, what's happening in Fareham, what's happening even in Clanfield. It's not something you can do on that basis. And you'll take all of that structural deficit from the Hampshire bit. So we are in a much better state than last year, and thanks to Chris and all the finance team as well, because they keep us on the straight and narrow. We cannot do this without them. But we're still overspent, but not as much, not anywhere near as much as our neighbours or most other authorities in the country. Anything that puts us in with any other authority, any other bits of Hampshire, will make that position worse. And we just have to remember that, which is why this administration has said from the beginning, hands off Portsmouth. Leave us out of this, government. I've also seen today that there is a rumour, there's a report in the Times which says suddenly they're going to consider unitary authorities of between 200 and 250,000. Portsmouth is between 200 and 250,000 people. So, government, keep to that then. If you're leaking that about other places, hands on Portsmouth, leave us as we are.
Thanks for that bombshell, Matthew. I don't think any of the rest of us had actually seen that yet. But points well made, and we've been making that point from the very beginning, particularly when the irony of the previous minister, who, as you know, I was not a fan of, who had this portfolio, saying that about drawing lines on maps was leaving his own former council that he was leader of out of local government reorganisation was just appalling optics. I mean, what on earth the man thought he was doing, I've got no idea. But anyway, he was not fit for purpose. He was actually one of the few people during the last government reshuffle that nobody really noticed that he'd gone, and we never even got an explanation as to why he was sacked. He just disappeared off the planet and said, oh, I've enjoyed doing it. Well, I'm glad you had a good time, Jim, because you've actually given a huge amount of stress to thousands of people who are out there now worried about the people that they represent, or the officers worried about the residents that they serve being able to continue to do their jobs as well as they do now, because you've wasted an inordinate amount of their time having endless meetings about all of this over most of this year. It has been utterly tortuous and one of the singularly most unpleasant experiences of my life, because if I'm going to spend hours and hours of my time sat in a room trying to work out how to do something, I would like to know why I'm doing it. And this government has not produced one shred of evidence that is remotely credible as to why this is necessary. If it had, we might have been able to look at this and at least understand what they're trying to achieve. But how can removing thousands of councillors across the country make the country more democratic and accountable? How can taking modestly sized local authorities and turning them into super councils make them more accountable to their residents? And that's what they're saying they want to achieve. Well, if you want to achieve that, then stop doing the whole thing and leave it alone and go away and go and bother somebody else. You're very good at that as well. So that is where we are, and unfortunately, we have no choice. We are caught by this, but you're quite right, Matthew, to raise that while we can sit here and have sensible and calm fiscal discussions now, the odds on us being able to do that when, remember, if the other local authorities will be merging with him, Hampshire does not solve its budget issue by 2028-2029, and bearing in mind it hasn't yet, after knowing about these issues for multiple years, we'll be facing an estimated £67 million budget deficit on day one. The current 662,000 overspend that we're trying to accommodate for this year will appear quite literally as a drop in a bucket. So that's what we've got to look forward to, folks. Decades of responsible administration in Portsmouth being torn up and thrown under a bus by a government who doesn't even know why they're doing it. So on that happy note, are we happy to note the general fund forecast outturn for 2025-2026 as at the 30th of June 2025? We are. Excellent. Okay, thank you, Chris. And sorry we went off on a tangent, but it's rather unavoidable at the moment, and it's Matthew's fault anyway. Okay, we're now on item 10 on today's agenda, which is the supplementary item, and it relates specifically to the arrangements required by that other Labour government big ticket item, and that is devolution, which means bringing powers down from government to local authorities, unless you're a Labour government, in which case it means bringing some powers down from government to local authorities and taking some powers from local government up to mayoral combined authorities, which is not devolution by anybody's description, I know, but at least this was in the manifesto. So, Natalie, could you introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for allowing me to bring this urgent item this afternoon. Cabinet will be aware that we have been moving at pace, working with the other three constituent authorities, that's Hampshire County Council, Southampton and the Isle of Wight, and ourselves, to establish the Strategic Authority, or the Combined Authority. This report seeks Cabinet approval for signing a Memorandum of Understanding, an MOU, which will help manage costs and the various appointments that are related to the establishment of the new Hampshire and Solent Combined County Authority. This report recommends authorising me as Chief Executive to sign the MOU on the Council's behalf, if you have a look at Appendix 1, and also for appointing Councillor Pitt and Councillor Sanders as Deputy to have their positions on, and be the representatives of Portsmouth on the Combined Authority Board and Shadow Board. The MOU aims to ensure that no additional costs are imposed on the constituent councils without unanimous agreement, and it also outlines principles for cost control and grant distribution of the Strategic Authority going forward. These costs should be contained within the Combined Authority, with all of the funding sources being exhausted before seeking any council contribution. The grants should be distributed that will come via the Combined Authority, and we are asking for those to be distributed on the existing proportions of the constituent councils. The MOU, in short, provides financial protection for the City Council against overspends and project costs of the Combined Authority. It is not legally binding, no MOUs are, but it is a demonstration of good faith between the four councils. The provisions of the MOU are expected to be incorporated in the new Combined Authority's Constitution and Local Assurance Framework. It's probably worth noting that the MOU does go into a bit of detail about this, that the Mayor will have powers over local transport plans and grant payments and grant allocations, and those costs can be apportioned by agreement on a population basis, and that the Mayor will also have the ability to apply levies to highways authorities, of which we are. The report also goes further by summarising the statutory and governance frameworks for the new Combined Authority's constitution, which will cover membership, its decision-making, remuneration and protection of overspends. So I'm happy to take any questions. That's the report in short. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Members, a bit of background before I come over to you. The important thing to remember about this particular issue is it's mainly theoretical. This similar guidance has been around for quite some time around the formation of combined authorities as to how overspends are dealt with, and it's never actually happened. And government have been quite clear that whilst they don't want to be prescriptive about it, it is about local authorities working together to resolve those issues should they occur. So there was a lot of to and fro going on, and there was the reason it's more focused here is that the county area is significantly bigger than it is in lots of other places, because both unitary authorities on the mainland, Portsmouth and Southampton, are modest in size, not necessarily small, but they're not huge in a big city conurbations like they are in some of the Midlands and northern areas. So therefore, the county area, you could argue, is disproportionately large currently. So they would have, under the arrangement, 70% responsibility for that overspend, and then because it's based on population and proportionately, Portsmouth, Southampton and the Isle of Wight would have those smaller percentages because our populations are much smaller. However, Hampshire weren't very happy about that, and there was an awful lot of to and fro, and without being disrespectful to anyone, obviously everybody takes a different stance and wants to argue for what's best for their council. in my view, that was muddying the waters from the reality, which was that to date, all 4 upper tier local authorities have worked incredibly constructively together, and we haven't disagreed about anything. And actually, we need to set that as a precedent so that whoever's running those 4 upper tier local authorities next year and subsequent years remembers that this was formed in a partnership with everybody making sensible compromises and working well together. So it seemed to me that the most obvious way to solve this was that either everybody agrees to how an overspend is going to be funded, if there is one, or it doesn't happen. And it is only an MOU, but remember, and there's lots of misreporting around this all over the place, online particularly, but nationally, a lot of conflation between LGR and devolution, completely different things. Remember that although there's a lot of talk about the mayor, there is also a board that sits with the mayor, which will be the leaders of whatever the new unitaries end up looking like post-local government reorganisation, and and each of those unitaries is very likely on the mainland to have 1 vote each, and the Isle of Wight also a vote. That's 5 votes. So the optics of a mayor going against all 5 unitary leaders are just don't bear thinking about, because this has to be the only way mayoral authorities work is if there is agreement and collective working between the leaders of the upper tier local authorities and the mayor. So whilst the mayor has theoretically got those powers, the reality is there is a big break on that, and that's what the upper tier leaders say, or the leaders of those new unitaries, as they will be. So mainly a theoretical exercise to tidy things up and make sure that Hampshire didn't feel that it was being shoved into a corner and accepting something that, although theoretical, technically there was a tiny chance that it could happen. So I think we're in a much better place than that now, and having made the proposal, everybody else seemed to fall in alongside and say, actually, that's really sensible. Why don't we do that? So that's where we are. The other bit of it is the stuff around the appointments to the board, really important, and as I said, that's where we will sit. So that seat until next May will be taken by me, and if I'm not available, Darren will go into that chair. Same for the leaders of Hampshire and Southampton and the Isle of Wight. We have worked together very, very well to date. I'd see no reason why that can't continue. And even with the disagreements that there's been along some of the local government reorganisation stuff, that has not crossed over into the discussions around devolution. We've been very clear to keep a line between the two. So it's been a pleasure to work with upper tier colleagues, and I see no reason why we can't continue along this in the same vein as we move forward. So we have those recommendations before us, as has been outlined by Natalie. Does anybody have any questions? Because this is a processy thing rather than a debate. Darren.
It's not a question, but I think it's just to make a couple of points clearer. And then I want to add one recommendation, which is that I think that the key thing, and it's in this report, is to give the mayor the sort of, or put the mayor in the sort of the prudent financial management, the financial straitjackets that we've just had in the last item around the revenue budget, frankly. And the idea is to be prudent with the money. The mayor is frankly going to be a start-up business for the first 4 years, and so it's important that we don't have people spending much more money and letting all councils who are going to be under significant stress, particularly if LGR happens, to pick up the tab. That hasn't happened here in Portsmouth, and I'm delighted that it's not happening here. And that's particularly true for transport, which is the main difference between what the 4 councils wanted to do, which was actually to have a more decentralised approach to transport, and what looks like it is coming out of government, which is a much more centralised approach based around the mayors. And in fact, not devolving power down, but centralising power. And as Steve says, that is wrong. The other bit is related to the ever-lovely other aspect of this, which is reorganisation. I've also read the Times article that Matt referred to earlier. It did include the words, all counties to be abolished by 2028, just to cheer everybody up. And there will be a statement on local government reorganisation this afternoon. There's already been one around Surrey. I understand there'll be a written ministerial statement later on this afternoon. And I suspect that will say that elections in 2026 will be postponed and will be cancelled. That is wrong. We said we opposed the cancelling of Hampshire's elections last year. We said that would lead to bad planning. We said that would create problems. And guess what? If, as I suspect will happen, that those 2026 elections will be cancelled again, that will vindicate that stance. And so the recommendation I wish to propose, Leader, is not to delete anything that's in the report, people will be pleased to know about, but to add a new recommendation 2.3, which is purely to state that Cabinet opposes the cancellation of the 2026 elections. Any cancellation, the cancellation of any council elections in 2026. I think it's important that we have a marker. We cannot allow some of the incompetencies that have come around this process to be dominated, and also we can't allow democracy to be denied. They're postponed once, and you'll have councillors in for 6 years. That cheers up councillors no end. But I have to say it doesn't cheer up the voters, and frankly the voters are more important to them. As for 2.2 and 2.1, I'm very happy with it. Steve.
Yeah, I need to check with Helen. It's not on the same subject as the report.
I don't think you can add it in as a recommendation because it's not related to the report itself.
Thank you for that. Then on that basis, can that be recorded, our opposition be recorded in the minutes of the meeting?
Yes, we can definitely do that, can't we? That's not a problem.
I would add, though, the only reason why the elections were postponed, it was only done in DPP areas. That's devolution priority areas were the only places where they were postponed. There is a link, but it's not directly related to this, but it links to, that's why 2025 elections didn't happen.
I guess what we could do, if we worded your suggestion, but to say particularly, or if we could say particular to any rationale produced by government that says that elections need to be delayed further for a process of pursuing devolution, we would not agree with that.
Yes, I think that would be acceptable.
Darren?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all think it's nuts.
Yeah.
I think several of us thought that delaying the election in the first place was nuts.
Well, it didn't achieve anything at all.
Exactly,
so,
and I think it actually has led to greater instability, which is the opposite of what it was achieving. But I think we just have to put out some markers there because, you know, we've had people write to the council saying, why on earth did you cancel this year's elections when they were never supposed to happen?
And we didn't have any anyway.
You know, I mean, that's a bit, that's sad in many ways, and it's a bit ridiculous. They even threatening us to take us to court, which was fun. So I think we should restate our opposition because, you know, we can't deny democracy for the sake of some convenient administrative process.
So I will suggest then the wording as follows. Whilst noting that elections were not postponed in Portsmouth in 2025, as it was a fallow year, I'm letting Anna take the notes now. Cabinet agrees that it would not support any proposal to postpone any elections due in 2026 for the purpose of delivering devolution. I'm not doing this by committee because we'll be here all night. Go on, Matthew.
It's just a very important point because we opposed the postponement of the elections this year.
We did.
Before they did. So I think the fact that we would say keeping to our the same as we opposed elections being postponed this year.
So Anna, include the words reiterate our previous objection to in the appropriate place. Everybody happy? Yeah. So in that case, we have 3 recommendations, 1, 2 of which is made up of A and B, and 3. Show of hands, please, on this one. Well, we're just taking a vote. Well, I thought you were voting, Matthew, because I said I'm going to take a go. What did you want to say?
It was just about there was just a concerning development that has come out today on the as a result of the statement which is given on Surrey. Not to do with LGR, interestingly, but it is to do with powers, which I think fits in with what Steve said earlier. So it says, and I will quote from the statements by the Minister. I'll just try to find it again. Oh, here we go. Yes. So, we are committed to working with partners across Surrey, including new unitary authorities once established, to establish a strategic authority for the area. So this fits in with their devolution bit. In order to ensure that relevant functions held at county level, order to ensure that relevant functions held at county level can continue to be delivered on that geographic footprint where possible, such as transport and adult skills. So I think that is a very concerning statement, because what that is saying is that they will be looking with strategic authorities at taking powers on transport and adult skills at least up from local authorities and doing them on a strategic authority footprint. Now, that was never what was being sold. And indeed, that was never what the government, in its thing, said, bringing it down from government. So that, in writing, in black and white today, is a very concerning statement. And I would say to the government, I've already done my hands off Portsmouth thing, because it's absolutely right. But in terms of devolution, and again, this was in their manifesto, but their manifesto was very specific about bringing things down from central government to a more local footprint. That's not what you've just said. And that is really concerning, because it's bad enough if we're going to be put into a local government reorganisation we don't want to be part of. But it's even worse if that new authority loses some power, so that instead of even being done at a South East Hampshire level, it ends up being done at a Hampshire and Isle of Wight level. Things like, things on your streets, could be parking, could be skills in our communities, could be skills in Portsea or Paulsgrove, could be skills and training in Milton or Hilsey. Decision being made by someone sitting in the castle in Winchester, because it won't be used for the county council anymore because it won't exist. So in their ivory tower, they're making decisions like that. We need to send that message to government. Keep to your promises. This was in your manifesto, but you specifically said bringing things down from central government to more local levels, to your strategic authority that you want to bring into being. Stop trying to take powers away from local government just so it gives you less people to speak to, and taking it further away. After all, he's saying you're going to make local government things in Surrey, which are going to be 500,000 people plus. That's really concerning. It's bad enough being 500,000 people, but if it's Surrey-wide and you've got no say about it, it's really bad. So that's a very concerning development in black and white as of, 2 o'clock today. So I think we need to make sure that in those discussions going forwards, and for the leader and the leaders of the other ones, when they're having discussions with ministers about devolution, and indeed our chief executive when she's having those discussions as well, is make sure that the government isn't trying to, by the back door, take powers away from local government and giving them to someone who sits in the castle in Winchester.
Now you want to speak.
I would only briefly say that previous to my colleague's comments there about what's been said today, every indication that we have had is that there will be a huge transfer of power and accountability from Portsmouth up to the mayor within the transport portfolio, and that Portsmouth residents will lose a great deal of control over what actually goes on their streets, on their buses. It is clear, without ever being clearly stated, that this is what is going to occur. And I think it is terrifying that with, a couple of 100 days now to the creation of a mayor, that such discussions are being had. It is clear that this process is being rushed, is ill thought through, and is going to have unintended consequences. And we all know that making up policy on the hoof through announcements that we hear in the middle of meetings like this is a recipe for disaster. This is how you can lose a great deal of money, waste a great deal of time, and deliver a far worse outcome for the citizens of the country, but I'm most interested in the citizens and residents of Portsmouth. So I'm afraid, Councillor Whittington, I am going to use the phrase hands off Portsmouth, because really the more we see of this, the less we like it.
Well, that's unfortunate, because we're in a meeting where we need to make a decision. So what do you think about that? Councillor Sanders.
The decision we've got to take today is a process decision.
Yeah.
It is independent of what, I mean, personally, I hate mayors, okay? I think that they're far too centralised, and the idea that one person can control 2 million people is for the birds. However, this is in Labour's manifesto, and this is how it wants it. What Matt and Peter have outlined is not the spirit of the stuff that the 4 councils sent to government before the devolution white paper. So the 4 councils, it's not their problem. But this is a process issue. And I support the recommendations that we've outlined before all that, because I think that's the best way of taking this forwards. I said I hate mayors in the first place, but I think that this is a sensible way forwards and would support the recommendations. Steve.
Is everyone happy with that? Yeah. I just don't want to take a vote on something when statements have been made about things that have happened during the meeting. That's not common, and therefore I need to check that everybody's comfortable with the situation. Yeah, okay. In which case, I'll go back to a loop back unless they announce anything else while I'm in the process of doing this. On the basis that they don't announce anything else in the next 3 minutes, can we please show whether we are in favour of the resolutions as listed in the paper? Yes, thank you. That's fine. Thank you very much. Yes, it just gets more extraordinary by the week, frankly, doesn't it, to be perfectly honest. But please be assured that none of the upper tier leaders are comfortable with anything going up from local authorities to the mayoralty. And one of the reasons why the wording in there is very specific around grants coming down to the Hampshire area to be administered by the mayor must be done so in the same proportionality that they've been allocated per local authority, as will be the case now. So you're right, it is about the Labour government wanting less people to talk to, basically at the end of the day. That's what this is all about, the Council of Nations and Regions, and just having mayors there and not the annoyance of having to talk to hundreds of different council leaders. That's what's behind it, is absolutely clear, and they've said as much. But at the same time, we need to be very clear that we do not accept local governments to become regional government by the back door. Thank you. Colleagues, that's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much for being here today.